this. Amy, do you want to get the recording started?
I just did.
Okay, great.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Do you need us to turn our cameras on or?
Oh, no, you don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just presenting today, but thanks, Deborah.
Okay.
And if y'all want to go on mute, unless you have a question, that'd be great. Here's a little bit more chatter from somebody out there. Okay, that was it. All right, awesome. So we'll get started. So today we're talking about the digital data visualization accessibility for dashboard developers. Data visualization accessibility. So let me start off by asking you guys a question you can answer in chat, a simple A or B. So would you rather analyze data in a spreadsheet or experience a beautiful data visualization? Okay, B, a lot of B's from Jessica. B, 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 B. Yeah, a little bit of a leading question. Oh, a couple A's. So we got some true data people out there. So yeah, I think this summarizes it well. Most people probably would want to see and experience something rather than just combing through numbers and data. So, you know, whether a dashboard is going to be good or accessible is really up to you, the dashboard creator. So that's what we're talking about today. So I'm John Cotter. I'm a digital experience and accessibility specialist with NCDIT, and I work with Amy Hepler, where we run an accessibility support shop for the state. And so we lead this COP meeting. And I asked Anna McNabb to join as well. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Anna Louise McNabb. I'm a public health informatician within the immunization branch. And one of my main focuses was creating the respiratory vaccine dashboards.
Yep. And I asked Anna to join. Thanks, Anna. I asked Anna to join because Anna requested that Amy and I test a dashboard that Anna made in Power BI for accessibility. And we got into it and we learned a lot through that experience. And I just thought Anna would be a great example to display what she made and some of the decisions she made when she was building that dashboard. So let's talk, thanks Anna. So let's talk a little bit about digital accessibility just kind of in general. And a lot of you probably know all this, so I'll keep it short. So the who, what, and why of digital accessibility. Accessibility is, I like to say it's a usability for a person with a disability. And the disability is like person who's blind, low vision, colorblind, low mobility, deaf, hard of hearing, or maybe some cognitive disabilities. So these are the types of people that we're trying to make our interfaces better for. And what we're trying to target is the web content accessibility guidelines. And for the state, Title II of the ADA says that the standard that we have to meet is WCAG 2.1 level AA. And now, why do we have to do it? I always try to lead with because it's the right thing to do. And when that doesn't click for people, then I say, well, it's the law, Title II of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's the who, what, why. And we want to talk about the how. How do you actually do this with data visualizations? How do you make your data visualizations accessible? That's what we're getting into today. So, dear data viz creators, here's what you need. Please pay attention to these things when you're building your data visualizations and your dashboards. This is basically the agenda for today. Text and alt text, focus order, contrast, use of color, and the instructions that we use. And there's a lot more to web accessibility, really, but I think that these are the 5 main things that we need to think about when we're building data dashboards. So the first thing is text. When we're talking about the text that we use, we're either giving things labels, we're titling things, And then if those things don't visually appear on the screen, then we're going to use alt text to communicate that information to our screen reader users. Those are the three things relating to text. So every important object needs text. And if you don't show the text, then you need to add alt text. So every important object in your data visualization, whether it's a button, some chart, some graph, and if you don't give text or alt text to every object, it's kind of like walking up to somebody who's wearing a blank name tag like this, name tag here. Like you don't know who they are or why they're important or why they're there. You kind of have to dig to figure that out. And we want to make it easy. When a screen reader user is going through an interface, just let them know what is this object for every object. So here's an example in Power BI. And if you don't do one of these two things here, a screen reader it's like walking up to someone with a blank name tag. So on the left, I have a date picker slicer in Power BI. And I added a visible title to that slicer. And I used the properties that Power BI gave me to set that title. And that title visibly appears on the screen. And so now a sighted user can read that and know what that control is. And a screen reader user is also going to hear that title too. Now, sometimes you don't want to show the text on the interface because maybe you feel like it's intuitive enough for someone who can see to know that that's a date range field, right? So, and that's okay, but you do need to add alt text to that element. So for this element, I went into the properties of Power BI and I am setting the alt text there. Now, if I don't set the alt text there, the screen reader is going to say, it's just going to say grouping for this control. If I don't have a title or alt text, it'll just say grouping. And so that's not so helpful. Now, one more thing. You can also do both. You can set a title text and alt text. So let's say maybe you want to visibly show the title, but you want to add a little bit more description, then you can put that in the alt text. So here's something I want you to know about Tableau. In Tableau, you can set alt text too, but Tableau, it'll auto-generate alt text, and it's extremely verbose. As you can see by my screenshot here, what it's doing, I guess, is it's taking all of the changes that you made or the settings that you made to build the visual, and it's putting that in the alt text. And okay, yeah, you got some alt text there, but I don't know how useful that really is going to be for a screen reader user. I mean, there's no way I'm going to be listening to that entire description. So please, 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 if you're building Tableau, for every worksheet that you add, go to the accessibility in the drop menu, the worksheet accessibility, and then you can set the alt text there. So set that for every worksheet. Put something in there that just is sort of like an introduction to the user to what this thing is. Is it a date range? Is it a chart? Something like that. Just describe it in the alt text briefly, and that's much more usable. Now, I have a video here to demonstrate what a screen reader says when you don't set titles in alt text. Please let me know if you're not able to hear this when I hit play. I'm not sure if this is going to come across. Let's see. Did you guys hear? Are you hearing that? You are hearing it. Okay. Great. So, and I'll play it one more time. So watch as the focus moves and then listen to what the screen reader says one more time. Not useful at all. It just says grouping for everything pretty much. And so if you're a screen reader user navigating through this interface, you have no idea what any of those things are. So you would have to dig in to them and try to figure it out. So that's what happens when you don't set titles and alt text. Now, when you do set titles and alt text, I didn't change the design. I didn't actually add titles to anything here. I just put alt text on this interface. Let me play this video. So that's great. So as I'm tabbing through that interface and hitting all those interactive controls, it's telling me exactly what they are as a screen reader user. So that's what you need to do. Okay. Now, here's another thing. Don't use a text box to label individual objects. I see this a lot when people are building interfaces. And it makes sense visually to put a text box next to something and then assume like a sighted user can make that association, right? But if you're a screen reader user, those things are not programmatically associated. They're just two separate things. So here I have a text box and it says donuts, and then I have a donut chart, and they're just near each other. So visually, yeah, they look connected, right? But programmatically, they're not. So when you're going through as a screen reader user, you don't know they're connected. So instead of doing it this way, use alt text or title on the chart. Now, where you may want to use a text box for, I'm not saying don't use text boxes, where you may want to use a text box for is for things like headings, summaries, instructions. If you just have a heading that just kind of defines everything on the page, that's great. Use a text box for that. If you have some instructions that tell the user, here's how this interface works, put that in a text box. That's okay. So Anna, let me turn it over to you so you can demonstrate and talk a little bit about the text in your Power BI report.
Yeah, let me go ahead and
And you
share
can-
my screen.
Sure.
All right. How does this look? Can you guys see okay, or do I need to zoom in anymore?
We got a
Good.
lot of thumbs up.
All right, awesome. So I'll use the, well, for a little bit of background, this is one of the flu vaccine dashboards. And to go into the text, I'll specifically look at this county chart just because it has the different variables we were talking about. So for example, up here, when you go over to general, I have title turned on, and that's where you'll see this estimated county coverage. And then I also have a subtitle is where I add a little bit more text. And then that other layer, I have the alt text that I have turned on, and then it has just a little description of what this chart is. Let's see, was there anything else specific to text? Yeah, and then like also the headings, there are a few different heading options within Power BI, and you can change those here. And then as it changes, you can go through the different settings as well.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
Let me share one more time. A little switcheroo here. Let's see. Hopefully this is quick. Okay. Oh, it shot me back at the beginning of the presentation. All right, so the next thing is focus order. So when you saw that video that I played, you saw the focus move through the interface. You could actually see it. And I was navigating with a keyboard. I wasn't clicking with a mouse. I was navigating with a keyboard. And so what you need to know is that not everyone uses a mouse. A person might use a keyboard to navigate because of their disability. So you should always be thinking about, okay, this works for a mouse user, probably works for a touchscreen user. What about a keyboard user, right? A person who can't use a mouse because of their disability. So when you're using a keyboard to navigate, you need to see the visual indication of focus move as you press that tab key. And you saw it in my video. Now here's a screenshot of 3 buttons, and that button number 2 has a nice dark outline around it. So that is a visual indication of focus. It's very obvious that that element has focus. And then when I know that element has focus, I can then interact with it, right? Now, another thing that's important for focus is the tab order. When you're navigating with the tab key and it moves through the interface, you want it to go in an order that makes sense, right? You don't want to make your keyboard users navigate a maze. And it should kind of go like, you know, from top to bottom, maybe left to right, just in order that makes sense. Kind of the way that you would fill out a form, like if you're filling out a form, you kind of want it to go from the top to the bottom, right? So in Power BI, the tab order is always going to be crazy when you build your interface. Always, it's always going to be crazy. And the reason for that is because the tab order is controlled by the order in which you insert elements into your interface, and nobody builds their interface from top to bottom. There's you're always putting something down here and then fixing a title and then adding a thing over here and then moving things around. So there is a way to fix that though. And so here's how you control the tab order in Power BI and Tableau. In Power BI, very simple. Anna's going to demo it. So there's a menu called View. So you go to View, Selection, Tab Order. And in that, you can sort of drag and drop things around. There's some arrow keys where you can reorder elements. There's also a button in there that's pretty magical that says Have Tab Order Match Visual Order. And when you press that button, boom, it just will rearrange everything. Not visually, it just affects the tab order. And then you can go through and check to see that that worked well by just testing it with your keyboard tab key. And then you can kind of, fine tune elements in there. You can also hide elements that you think shouldn't be in the tab order, things like decorative objects. Anna's going to demonstrate that. Now in Tableau, it's not as easy. I just met with the Tableau accessibility lead last week, and I asked this question: how do you control tab order in Tableau? And it's something on their roadmap that they want to give an easier interface like Power BI. But today, the way that you have to edit it to modify the tab order is you have to edit an XML file. Very tedious. You have to get in there and mess with numbers in that file. So it's not so pretty. Now, I think that I've done a lot of research on Tableau tab order, and it's a little fuzzy to me if newer versions automatically handle it well or not. I'm not so sure. Maybe someone with Tableau can add to that. But this is what the Tableau team said to do if you need to fix tab order issues, edit the XML. Okay, now here's another thing. Keyboard navigation, the platform's keyboard navigation, it might not be so intuitive for keyboard users. And so what I mean by that is a keyboard user who navigates the web is very familiar with standard keyboard operation of controls. They know that like a space bar and an enter key presses a button. They know that the arrow keys can change selections within a combo box. So there's these things that are just intuitive to them. Now, some of the controls within Power BI and Tableau are not so intuitive. And so if a keyboard user had to try to guess to control those interfaces, they may not get it on their first try. They may have to try a few things. They may have to read the keyboard accessibility documentation for the platform. And so here I've linked those two resources. Going to give this presentation out later so you guys can follow that. But it might just be useful to just get link to that in your dashboard. Just put the link there and just say, here you go, here's your keyboard accessibility help. Users might find that helpful because it may not be intuitive. Now, along with keyboard navigation, I want to mention a table view before I turn it over to Anna. So because the interfaces are maybe difficult to navigate and it maybe because it's tricky to understand the visualization as a screen reader user, a user may just prefer a table, like everyone who said A in my first question, kind of like a spreadsheet, columns and rows. And the table view, a show table view, is an option. It's built into Power BI. It's actually an automatic thing that you don't even have to do. You just build your visual, and keyboard users can press Alt-Shift F11 when they have focus on a visualization, and that will show a table view. And a screen reader user may prefer that. So that's pretty cool. Now with Tableau, it's something you need to turn on, and then users can have that ability, but you as an author need to turn it on. Unfortunately, it's not automatic. And then Anna's also going to demo a table view that she customized. So I'll turn it over to you now, Anna.
All right, I'll share my screen again. And I did zoom in a little bit more just to make sure. I'll start with the tab order to give you an example of how I updated some things and just how to navigate. So like John mentioned, you go to view and then you'll click this selection tab and then it will show up here on this right hand with the other panes. Then you'll go over to tab order and then you will select this button right here, have tab order match visual order. It'll automatically organize them in a way that makes sense for how you would read this on the screen. I will say, I believe there were a couple that I manually moved around just with some text boxes and buttons. It just made more sense to have some rearranged a little bit. And then the last piece, well, actually, before I jump to that, another good just note is to make sure that you have all of your objects named in a way that you know how to distinguish what they are. A lot of times when they're created, they're very general. So as you can see, a lot of the ones that I hid were very general with shape, text box, because I knew that it wasn't necessarily necessary to have them navigated to. And that's another example of a way to kind of remove the clutter and let the accessibility truly show what is necessary. So that's an example of the tab order. And then the table view. For the county coverage, I decided to do my own custom table just because I wanted it to be able to match one, the formatting theme, and then also just with the color variation, it made sense to have that as an option. So I'm also in the desktop version, and so when it's online, you can easily click it. But I'll go here to this tab that takes me there that is connected to that button. And I created this just to match the theme. And then also you have the filter here, but when you're on the main page, you can also use that filter to filter down this table. But for example, you can see how it changes. I think that was all we covered.
Yeah,
But,
and I
yeah.
love that custom table view. It's a really nice way. You know, some users may prefer prefer that.
Yeah, I'll hand it back over to
Awesome.
you.
Cool. All right. Again, it started me back at the beginning of the deck. I wish. All right. So the next topic here is contrast. The text contrast, the contrast of your text, is it readable? The graphical object contrast and the user interface contrast. So text, there's a magic number that we need to hit, 4.5 to 1. Text has to have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. And if you look at these two examples here, all the text on the left meets that minimum contrast ratio. The ones on the right don't. What we're doing is we're measuring the text color against the background color. And so there's various tools. I'll show you the tools that you can use to measure that, that will calculate that contrast ratio based on those two colors. So you take the hex value of the text color, take a hex value of the background color, put it into this calculator thing that I'm going to give you, and then it'll give you that magic number. And if it's lower than that magic number, you need to change the colors until it hits at least 4.5 to 1. If you're curious, black on white is like 21 to 1. So that's kind of like the maximum color contrast. Contrast. And so that's text contrast. Now there's another WCAG requirement called non-text contrast. And what that's after is the contrast of things that aren't text, but are still important to help understand the information. And that's super important for data visualizations, right? So here's what this requirement is saying. It's saying that whenever you have graphical objects that are providing some meaning, like this pie chart, those graphical objects need to have a contrast ratio of at least 3 to 1 with adjacent colors. And so what that means is every slice of this pie is a graphical object. And when those slices touch, I need to measure that contrast. So when I have this green slice here and this blue slice, I take a little hex value from each of those colors, pop them into the calculator, and it tells me a magic number. Now, when I did it here, it said 1.2 to 1. So that's below 3 to 1, so that would fail. That means that would be hard for someone with low vision or someone standing outside in bright sunlight, you know, trying to understand this data, to be able to see those slices. So you need to adjust those colors to hit that contrast ratio. Now, here's a bonus tip. You can do something where if you added a little bit of space in between those slices, like maybe white space or, you know, a border or something, white space, something maybe black, then you would only have to measure against the white space instead of the adjacent pie slice. So that's kind of a bonus tip, and you'll see that in a couple slides here, where I did that. Now here's the two tools. If you just Google contrast checker, you usually end up with this first one on the left here, WebAIM contrast checker. That gives you that calculator where you can pop in your hex values and it'll give you the calculation. There's some lightness sliders on there where you can drag the slider and it'll change the hex value for you, and then you can just grab that hex value. That's an awesome tool. There's another tool called the color contrast analyzer. That's something you have to install. But what's cool about that one is it gives you a little eyedropper where you can pluck pixels off the screen to do the calculation. So, and when you're thinking about colors, it's sometimes hard to hit those ratios, you know, of the adjacent colors. And I find that if I design on a dark background, I can hit those requirements better. And so that's what I did here with these two images. And you can see on my donut chart here, I have a little black border between those slices. So that's how I was able to kind of cheat. And now I don't have to do the contrast between the green and the red. I'm just measuring against the green and the black, the red and the black. So yeah, I like the dark background themes personally. All right, now one last thing you need to know about for contrast testing is the state changes. You also need to make sure that when you hover, press, put focus on something, you can still read that text and you can still distinguish that graphical object or user interface control. So you also need to test the colors of these state changes. When I hover over a button, does the background color change? When it changes, does it make the text unreadable? Those are the things you want to look for. When I'm tabbing through with the keyboard, does it change the background color or the text color or something? You need to look out for that. And you can control the styling of the states, and it can demo that in a second. In Power BI, very easily, she'll demo that. Unfortunately, in Tableau, there's no native support for customizing the style of those buttons or states. It's possible that the theme you choose might automatically provide that for you. I don't have enough Tableau experience to really make a recommendation, but Anna, I'll turn it over to you for a demo.
All right. Okay. So a good example of this is kind of the navigation buttons at the top. We're currently on the overview page, and then I also have a page that drills down into some other vaccination rates by race and ethnicity. So that would be the demographics tab. You can see that this is in gray because this is the page we are on. So that is the press state, and I'll show you, let's see. Okay, so the style, it's under style, and then you apply settings to the state. And so this is the press state, and then you also have hover and then selected. So if you go over to demographics and hover, you can see it changes to this light gray. And then if you press, it changes as well. And so those are the 3 different options that you need to consider when you're looking at the different color contrasts. I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, yeah. Awesome, Anna. Thanks again. I like this tag teaming thing. It keeps it interesting. It gives me a moment to catch my breath too. All right, that was contrast. And now use of color. I gave a whole presentation on use of color a few months ago. You can look for that link in our team's presentation history, or I think it's also on YouTube. But want to hit this because it's important for data visualizations too. So when we use color, we got to think about people who are colorblind, right? Because not everyone can see all colors. So these tools, Power BI and Tableau, give you colorblind palettes, and then we also just need to generally be thinking about, are we using color as meaning? Is that the only way we're communicating information? So Power BI has some colorblind palettes, so does Tableau. Yay, we're both good there. So maybe just use those themes when you're building your designs, and you might be pretty good with your design. But you still need to test the contrast ratio of the graphical objects, even if you choose a colorblind palette. Now, here's some examples of some data visualizations where these aren't accessible because you need color vision to kind of understand them. I have a line chart, scatter plot, pie chart, different types of bar graphs, and it's just all color. Even the scatter plot, it's just dots of colors. The line chart is just colors. So you really need to have, would probably be a legend here, and you need to visually map the legend between the colors, but you need to be able to distinguish the colors in the legend and in the chart to understand it. So that's why this isn't accessible. We're using color as meaning. Now here's some accessible versions of charts. And this is pretty awesome. So there's different styles of markers. These data visualization tools call them markers. And a marker is like the shapes that you use for data points. So in the line chart, I have diamonds, squares, and triangles. And now the shape works for me. I don't need to rely on color. Same with the scatter plot. With the bar chart, I have different textures on my bars, so I can distinguish using that. And in the pie chart, I have labels next to the slices, text labels next to the slices. So that works for that. And then in the line chart, I have a dashed, dotted, and solid line. And just to prove to you that you don't need color vision to understand this, boom, here it is in grayscale. So if I were to print this out on a printer, it would work. A black and white printer, people would be able to understand this data visualization. I don't know if we need to show. Anna, did you have anything to show for this one?
Not. I mean, I can share the colors that I use, but I think there's not too much to show with that.
Okay. Yeah, I liked your very green theme. It was very calming. Okay, so then the next final topic here is instructions. A lot of times we're going to be giving instructions or explaining things to users on maybe how to navigate the interface or what does the information mean. And I just think it's really important to make sure that even in our instructions, we're thinking about accessibility. Here's a funny image of a cat in a blindfold here. So when you're describing controls by name, you want to describe controls by name, not by how they look, right? That's what we need to think about when we're doing instructions. Not everyone can see what we're talking about. So we talk about controls by name. So we would say, press the submit button to submit the form. We wouldn't say press the red button to submit the form. Things like that. And I like to avoid using the word click in my instructions because not everyone uses a mouse. So I might choose to use words like activate, select, press. Press the submit button instead of click the submit button, or activate the control instead of hover over the control or something like that. And then also just plain language, use clear, concise, organized instructions. Now, here's another. I keep keeping with the cat theme here. It's a nice little orange cat being pet, and he looks so happy. So be helpful in your user guides, right? give users instructions on how to use non-intuitive interfaces. And I talked about this a little earlier where I said that some of these platforms have keyboard navigation and it works, but it's not intuitive. And so users might need a little help on figuring out how to use the interfaces. So just be helpful. Link to the documentation, right? Link to the platform's own accessibility documentation for end users. We want to give them the end user accessibility documentation, not the accessibility documentation that you need to build it. And then maybe just give a contact to report accessibility issues. You know, that really shows users that you care about them when you can say, hey, click this to report accessibility issues. If you're posting, if you're publishing your data visualizations in the Digital Commons platform, that's the North Carolina CMS. I forget what CMS stands for. The tons of North Carolina websites are on that platform. At the bottom of that, in the footer, there's an accessibility link, and users can get help there. So maybe that's good enough. And here's one last. No, this is. I have two more funny little images here. So I love this image here of a remote control, super complicated, and then somebody duct taped to hide a bunch of the buttons. Probably because they got tired of telling grandma how to turn the TV on, you know? And so I like this image because, you know, if you limit your fancy features in your interface, it goes a long way. Decide what matters, let go of the rest, turn off advanced features. And there's some advanced features in Power BI and Tableau that you can turn off. I mean, they're like cool stuff, but it's like data expert, drill down, get really into the data stuff. And maybe that's what your users want, but for the general public, probably not. They just probably want to see a chart and get a story. Where's this line going? What can I predict? Where was it? You know, that's what the user really wants. So turn off features that are kind of overkill, right? Limit that cognitive load. And then here's my last funny image. Okay, and yes, I used Comic Sans here. So it may be the platform's fault, but it's your responsibility. And here's that funny meme of like three Spider-Mans, they're all pointing to each other. Yeah, I guess, you know, they're like tossing the blame around to each other here. So the Power BI and Tableau, they've taken some accessibility into consideration for sure. Now, they're not perfect, right? So some accessibility issues are the fault of the platform. But that doesn't mean that you can just blame the platform and walk away. You know, when users come to you and say, I don't understand this information, you can't just be like, go talk to Tableau, go talk to Microsoft. Users are going to be upset if you do that. So it really is your responsibility, even though because you chose to use the platform. So what can you do? Well, I wrote a whole entire blog about this, and I linked it here, but just kind of in short, you can maybe remove a problematic feature. Maybe you can swap a problematic feature with a feature that's not problematic. Maybe you just can read the documentation, and maybe there's something in there that you would learn, like a little setting that you need to set. Like for example, in alt text, you know, maybe you just need to add some alt text to make it accessible. And then kind of when all else fails, if you really need some help, contact the platform. The Tableau team got back to us very quickly when we reached out about accessibility issues. And they offered some guidance, they offered some documentation and some links for some patterns and designs that some teams were building. But yeah, that link there has a lot more options of what you can do when the issue is caused by a platform you chose. Again, it's still your responsibility. So I'm just going to end up here. We'll definitely have some time for some questions and things related to data visualization or anything else digital accessibility. But tons of resources here. Again, I'm going to send out this slide deck, and we're also going to publish this video on YouTube. But just going over these resources, we got NCDIT accessibility resources here. I have the links to Power BI, Tableau accessibility, and then another one I think is people use is SAS, Visual Analytics. and then just tools to do some testing. You know, use your keyboard. It's so easy. Everybody has a keyboard. You can tab through your interface and see how it works for them. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, download a screen reader and try it out with the screen reader. Listen to what it says. Make some changes on your interface. Close your eyes. Can you understand the data visualization, right? Based on what the screen reader is saying. And then those color contrast analyzer tools. So, and then one last plug here. We run, Amy and I run a digital accessibility support team for North Carolina, where we can give you consultations, testing, and training. And there's a ServiceNow link there. So thank you for considering the accessibility of your data visualizations. We'll open it up to questions. And I was not monitoring the chat, so I may have missed anything there.
I don't
Amy, is there any?
Yeah, I don't see any particular questions that were unanswered except for April had a
Good morning,
specific
Dark
question.
Top. This is Lavita.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm good. How are you, Erica?
Did you have a question for our group, Olivia? And she sounds like she's on a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay, April,
she
you have
is.
your hand up.
Yes, I had a question that I put in chat. We have the payroll calendars here at OSC, and they are currently not accessible at all, and we need to change them, obviously. So I was looking at the tools, you know, that we could access, like Power BI or Tableau, but I'm not familiar with them. I don't use them. So would you all have a recommendation if we were going to go with one over the other? You know, essentially we would be creating calendars, monthly calendars. Ideally, they'd be interactive. Currently, they are coded by color, which, you know, obviously is not accessible. And so giving them more more options for interaction would be great, I think. So which would be better?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I don't know if a data visualization platform would be even the right
Best. Okay.
answer at all. I mean, I don't know. I guess, you know, reach out to us and we'll take a look at what you have.
Okay.
And provide some feedback on how it's looking. But April, I know you know accessibility well, so I don't doubt that it's got issues. You know, maybe just a basic HTML web interface could do it, but I guess that would depend on, you know, what your development team is like. But yeah, I'll open that up to anyone in the group who has some other recommendations.
Thank you.
Cameron, you got your hand up.
Hey, I think I know the answer to this already, and I don't want to hear it, but I'll throw it out there. What would you say if somebody is, you know, administrator of a website, but they're not the ones that built visualizations that go on the website? Is there anything you can do to help as the web admin, or is it you must build these things in mind?
Yeah. So Title II, sorry, my voice is cracking here. Title II says that when we have public-facing web content, sorry about that. When we have public-facing web content, it has to be accessible, right? And even if a third party built it for us, that also needs to be accessible. So it's got to be accessible, right? So somehow you just need to have a conversation with that team who built it and say, hey, this is a standard that we have to hit. It's the law. And if you need my team to do a review of that interface, we can do that. That's that last link I provided to ServiceNow. Maybe Amy, you can drop that in the chat. But yeah, in order to really start the discussion, you need to have an inventory of the issues, probably, right? If it's already built. So that's the best place to start, Cameron.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I got a few announcements. Okay, let me share this other slide deck. All right, so I mentioned Title II ADA a bunch. If you haven't heard of it, there's a deadline, April 24. So we're about exactly 2 months away. And that deadline was set by the Department of Justice. So it said that the state government and local government web content needs to meet WCAG 2.1 level AA. Another thing that's really exciting is that we have this initiative to put a digital accessibility coordinator in every agency at the state to help meet that deadline. And so this email went out to agency CIOs, right, Amy, saying that please name a digital accessibility coordinator. And we want you all to fill that role if you can. So I put XXX here. That should say I never got a chance to change that. That should say talk to your CIO. But yeah, we want you all to be the primary contact, to be the digital accessibility coordinator, the accessibility lead for your agency. And then the plan is to, you know, meet regularly with Amy and I. We arm you with the resources that you need to be able to distribute. Keep tabs on the Dubbot reports. That's our accessibility scanner that scans all our websites. And just sort of lead the digital accessibility for the agency. And Liz has your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Liz Cooper from Union County. Thank you for hosting. So we have provided all of our county employees resources to ensure that they are creating digital content that is accessible, that is going on our website or on a board agenda, something of that nature. But that is proving to be a very heavy lift, as a lot of other employees throughout the organization don't understand how and why, and we have hammered this over and over again. But I would love any tips, resources, advice anybody has on that it seemed to have worked well or is working well with really leaving the onus on the employees creating the reports or the content, so that me and my team were not like the remediation factory.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's creating content needs to have this awareness, right? So, and it's hard, and it's a lot to learn, and it costs money, and it takes resources. So, you know, a good place to start would be the resources that are on our NCDIT website, and I'll drop a link to that in a second. It's a good place to start learning, and then, you know, to have some consultations with. Well, see, we want the digital accessibility coordinators to be the leads for this. So ultimately, these questions would go to the digital accessibility coordinators of each agency, and then, you know, the digital accessibility coordinators would kind of filter information back to me and Amy and stuff like that. So that's kind of the long-term plan. But Liz, you're nailing it. That it's a struggle, right? And we're trying to get the world to change, and it's hard. And so, okay, so the last announcement is kind of transitioning from what Liz said was Amy and I are going to hold PDF accessibility open office hours on the first and third Tuesday of each month, starting next Tuesday. And I will put the link to that. Oh, I can't do it. Maybe I can do it like this. I'll put the link to those meetings in the chat right now. It's 2 separate invites because that's how Microsoft works. If you do something like that, first and third
It's the
Tuesdays.
same link, John. It's the same
It-
link.
Oh, it's the same
Yeah.
link? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Then I guess click on it. Needs a little bit more about PDF accessibility. The reason we're opening this office hours up is because we've gotten just flooded with PDF requests for help. And Amy and I, we don't do like full remediate. We're not a PDF remediation shop. We're accessibility support, and we can kind of help answer specific questions. But ultimately, the job of the remediation is up to you or the person creating the PDF. And if you need additional help, you might need to seek a vendor. Now, Amy, do you want to talk about the RFP?
Oh, yes. If you may have heard already that the state has an accessibility RFP currently out for bid. This is for multiple vendors to submit for different accessibility services, PDF remediation, training, auditing. That will close soon, and I think we start evaluating the bids, I want to say March 5th. So we'll try to get those evaluations done as quickly as we can, because we know a lot of agencies are eager, especially getting some of those PDFs out. We're also working on a HTML or PDF to HTML solution with Google. I think I mentioned it here before, but I'll mention it again. It'll be coming to the Digital Commons platform by hopefully mid-March. This will be available to Digital Commons customers at no cost. It will allow you to convert your PDF into a single column HTML page. It will redirect the link that was to your PDF to the new site page with the information. This tool will also be available to websites outside of Digital Commons, but that is going to be at a later date. We're looking sometime in mid-April for that delivery.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Amy. And someone, Colleen, asked to explain Dubbot and when are the office hours. Phoebe, would you mind speaking about Dubbot a little bit?
Sure. Dubbot is our quality assurance and accessibility management tool that is a SaaS tool. So it's software as a service. And we are trying to load every digital asset that we can into Dubbot so that it will crawl your site and identify accessibility issues or failings on your site so that you can go in and correct them. And if you would like access, reach out to me. I'll put my email here in the chat. Please know there's quite a bit of a backlog right now. As the secretary just sent out emails to all the CIOs asking for every single digital asset that every agency had so that we could load it into Dubbot. So we're doing that right now.
Awesome. And Sarah posted a link to
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, what is that? That goes straight to ServiceNow. So that's how you can request it. Man, I love this community. Everyone wants to help out in our chat.
John, April asked a question I'd like to address. Will there be a cost to agencies that are not in Digital Commons for the PDF to HTML? There will be a cost, but we're looking at pennies per page. We've had quotes for about 3 cents a page. And look at that compared to remediation can be anywhere from, $5 to $10 a page, depending on the complexity of your document. So it really is a good solution. We do understand that there are some things that just aren't good candidates to be converted to HTML, things that you need to keep in a specific layout. Forms, yeah, we are not, forms is an exception. We're not able to convert the online PDF, your PDF forms to online web forms. Yeah.
Yeah, and that cost is the cost of the AI transactions, I guess. But the non-digital commons solution PDF conversion, it's going to need a developer to receive a I don't want to get too technical here, but receive a JSON and then parse that and pull the HTML out. So there is probably also going to be that added cost of just you're going to need a developer who can like do that. Not too hard for a developer to do, but the digital commons side, there's going to be an interface where the web managers just click buttons and just say, yeah, convert this, don't convert that. The things that it's not going to convert, I maybe missed if Amy said it or not, but it won't be able to convert forms. Oh, April just mentioned that. So if a PDF has a form, this tool is not going to do that. So if you had a PDF form, ask yourself, why is it a PDF form? Is it something someone's mailing in? That probably makes sense to stay as a PDF. It still needs to be accessible, right? But if it's just a PDF that someone fills out online, web HTML, web content, a web app is a much better use of that kind of transaction for the public. It's going to be more accessible. All right. Any other questions? Okay, awesome group. So I will send out the YouTube recording and the slide deck, and then feel free to contact if you have additional questions. All right, well, this was fun. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.